It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Abuja. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to NEWSLINK, and here are the top stories. Senegal state prosecutor to appeal opposition Ousmane Sonko's inclusion in electoral roll, but expert warns of imminent public uproar.
In case the Constitutional Council decided that Sonko candidacy will be dropped out, most people, his supporters, will consider that it's really not based on law, but maybe on some other consideration.
Nigerian junta to revise all agreements with countries with military bases on its soil. Tragedy strikes in Liberia as dozens fear dead in Bon County fuel tanker explosion.
More people that were around at Senegal, most of them left in the fire. It's really a disaster. So many people lost their life, and some of them were wounded. They just took them to the hospital.
And the governor of Nigeria's commercial state of Lagos tells citizens to be hopeful for greater prosperity.
The world has indeed gone through a lot, and so it's not peculiar to us alone. And so we are at the recovery stage that will appear as if we still have a bit of pain here and there. But I can assure us that indeed, with all the policies of the current federal government, that indeed there is light down the tunnel.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with NEWSLINK.
Many thanks for joining us. Let's begin in Senegal, where state prosecutors filed an appeal with the Supreme Court on Tuesday in the case of Ousmane Sonko's removal from the electoral list. According to the prosecutor, the state is working to overturn the decision taken on December 14 by the judge of the Dakar District Court to reinstate the Senegalese opponent on the electoral list. Abdullah Hassan has the details.
Recall the Dakar High Court ordered on December 14 the reinstatement of Sonko in the electoral register, opening the way for him to participate in the presidential election. Bamba Cisse, one of the opponent's lawyers, said the judge cancelled the removal measure which had been taken by the state of Senegal against Ousmane Sonko and ordered his reinstatement in the electoral roll. State lawyer El Hadj Diouf then announced an appeal to the Supreme Court for the annulment of the decision. The state had 10 days to appeal. Less than 2 weeks later, this Monday, Ousmane Sonko submitted his candidacy for the February 2024 presidential election before the Constitutional Council, despite the administration's refusal to provide him with all the necessary documents. The deadline for submitting candidacies for the presidential election in Senegal had expired at midnight on Tuesday. The setbacks of the Pastef leader began with the accusations of rape brought against him by a young lady working in a beauty salon in the capital in March 2021 and led to his conviction for corruption of youth. The opponent has always pointed to a plot hatched at the highest level of the state to exclude him from the presidential election of February 25, 2024.
Abdullah Hassan filed that report. Meanwhile, Senegal's primary opposition figure Ousmane Sonko has submitted to the Constitutional Court, despite the refusal of the Directorate General of the Elections to provide them with sponsorship forms. The incarcerated opposition leader and his team managed to compile the necessary documentations. Recently, the Dakar High Court overturned Sonko's removal from the electoral roll by the Ministry of the Interior. In response, the state's legal representative have announced their intention to appeal this decision. Well, as the situation unfolds, Senegalese political analyst Mamadou Chua projects the potential public reaction should Ousmane Sonko be barred from contesting, especially given the contentious circumstances surrounding his exclusion from the electoral list.
Seeing Ousmane Sonko submitting his candidacy is quite a surprise for many people because we've witnessed over the last week the challenges he has gone through. I mean, to get all the file, all the documents for him to be able to run for 2024 presidential election. That's why when the news came out that he succeeded in submitting his candidacy at the Constitutional Council, many people were surprised, but we will have to wait and see what will be the outcome of all this.
Right. So talking about having to wait to see the outcome, how might the Senegalese public respond if Ousmane Sonko is disqualified from running for office, especially given the controversy surrounding his removal from the electoral roll?
I think the most difficult is starting now, because if he succeeds in submitting his candidacy, and in case the Constitutional Council decided that Ousmane Sonko candidacy will be dropped out, so most people, his supporters, will consider that it's release not based on law, but maybe on some other, consideration. So that's why I think the 7 members of the Constitutional Council has a very big case, and they have to be careful the way they handle it. If Usman Sonko has the law with him, so if there is nothing which can deter him from being a candidate, they should, allow him to be a candidate. Because so far, as many people put it, there's no final judicial decision, meaning all these cases is involved in it.
Our Senegalese political analyst, Mamadou Chou. In the meantime, former Ivorian minister and banker Tidjane Cham has assumed leadership of Côte d'Ivoire's oldest party, PDCI-RDA, following the party's 8th Extraordinary Congress held in Yamoussoukro. Tidjane Cham shares his aspirations for the party under his leadership. Sankli Janko tells us more in this report by WDL's Abidjan correspondent Alben Ade.
The newly elected president of PDCI RDA is poised to redefine the political landscape. He envisions a politics rooted in peace, devoid of ethnic slurs or verbal confrontations, focusing instead on the empowerment of human potential.
Il n'y a rien de plus important que l'éducation, parce que en réalité, vous réalisez que tous les problèmes.
There is nothing more important than education, because when you look at the real problems facing society, they are directly linked to education. So putting the emphasis on our education system, making sure at all levels, primary, secondary, tertiary, that Ivorians have access to a system where there is quality of opportunity, where the fact that they belong to this or that party doesn't determine their destiny, but that their destiny is determined by their ability to get by. That is something that is very important to me.
Tidjane Cham, former head of Credit Suisse, foresees 2024 as a pivotal year for PDCI RDA, marked by a fresh wave of energy and innovation.
We have over 2,000 membership pending, so I believe that 2024 will be the year of renewal for the PDCI. You are going to see a new PDCI based, of course, on the old values that have made the PDCI what it is, but also with a renewed level of energy and a new dynamic.
Under Cham's leadership, there is a strategic push to amplify the presence of the once dominant party. The objective is clear: to actively engage and mobilize the youth and women.
That was a report by our Abidjan correspondent Alban Ade, voiced by Sankli Janko. The Nigerian authorities have announced that they will review all military agreements with countries with bases in Niger. This decision was notified to the countries concerned in a correspondence address to their diplomatic representations by the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It is the United States of America, Germany and Italy which have military bases in Niger. Following the coup d'etat of July 26 and the refusal of the French authorities to recognize any legitimacy, the CNSP soldiers requested and obtained the withdrawal of all French soldiers in Niger. The last French soldiers left the army on Thursday, December 22.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NewsLink continues.
Well, let's shift our focus now to Liberia, where dozens are feared dead in Bong County following a fuel tanker explosion. The tragic event took place on Tuesday after the attack overturned in the region, resulting in numerous fatalities and leaving several individuals injured. The government will be briefing the press later in the afternoon on the latest development on the explosion. But from Monrovia, WDR's Ellington Popper brings us the report.
The fuel truck was transporting over 9,000 gallons of gasoline from Monrovia to Ganta in Nema County when the mishap happened. Local reporter Adolfo Dennis, communicating with WADR via mobile phone at the time, mentioned that numerous individuals who hurried to the site to collect the spill fuel suffered several burns. Dennis highlighted that over 20 individuals with critical injuries were taken to the Phoebe Hospital in Bong County and the John F. Kennedy Hospital in Monrovia.
When the tanker dropped, there were a lot of people who were around the tanker. What people were saying, when accident took place, when we were around, we just saw the explosion of fire coming out. More people that were around that tanker most of them left in the fire. Yeah. It's really a disaster. So many people lost their life, and some of them was wounded. They just took them to the hospital. Some of them, they took them to JFK. They took some people to Phoebe. But so many people got burned, but we're waiting for the fire to cool down.
The journalist emphasized that such an occurrence is unprecedented in central Liberia, with authorities currently investigating the root cause. For NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
Well, following the attack that killed over 100 people in north-central Nigeria's Plateau State over the weekend, Amnesty International has called on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to find and bring those responsible for the attacks to justice. 160 people were killed and over 300 injured. The non-government organization points out that the measures announced by Tinubu to curb insecurity have so far been slow to materialize. According to Amnesty International, these deadly attacks demonstrate the shortcomings of President Bola Tinubu's security measures. The human rights organization in a statement insists that the Nigerian authorities must conduct an impartial and effective investigation into these attacks. The governor of Plateau State on Tuesday said he did not have the means to investigate what had happened. He called on the security agencies to look into the matter, questioning the source of weapons. Caleb Mutwang stressed that without a clear idea of financial sources of the groups attacking communities, it would be difficult to put an end to these attacks. Still in Nigeria, in the south-south region, with 6 illegal oil refinery installations in Opu, Arugbana, Degama local government area of River State were recently demolished by airstrikes conducted by the air component of Operation Delta Safe from the Nigerian Air Force. This information was conveyed in a statement released by the Director of Public Relations and Information of NAF Air Commodore Edward Bakwe on Tuesday in Abuja. The military operation, as informed by sources, was executed on December 23, 2023, based on intelligence insights. Usman Mari in Abuja has more details.
A statement from the Air Force reveals the discovery of illegal sites concentrated within an approximately 80-meter radius situated about 6 nautical miles south of Oku Arubana, an oil-rich community in the Degema local government area of River State. The Nigerian Air Force's Director of Public Relations and Information, Air Commodore Edward Gapquet, stated that upon confirmation of the sites being active, authorization was granted to destroy all 6 locations, aiming to deter criminals from engaging in illegal activities. The statement emphasized that despite the ongoing holiday season, air operations against criminal activities in the Niger Delta and other regions of the country persist. Citing a recent study published in the American Journal of International Relations, the statement highlighted the adverse impact of unlawful crude oil bunkering on host communities. The study revealed that these activities have led to poverty among residents, causing health, environmental, and economic challenges. The survey indicated that Nigeria suffers an annual income loss of approximately $2.184 trillion due to illicit crude oil bunkering. For NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
In the meantime, Governor of Nigeria's commercial state of Lagos, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has urged citizens to remain hopeful of greater prosperity that would be recorded in the country as the current administration, led by President Bola Tinubu, continues to tackle the myriad challenges facing the nation. Speaking with journalists on Tuesday, Governor Sanwo-Olu said to work for Lagos better and faster in his second term in office and to accelerate development across the identified areas in his Themes Plus agenda. He likened Nigeria to a case of a recuperating patient.
Our case is like a case of a patient who had been diagnosed with an ailment, who has also received some medication, but is now in the process of recovery. And during that recovery process, there will still be the pain that will be felt. The country has indeed gone through a lot. The world has indeed gone through a lot. And so it's not peculiar to us alone. And so we are at the recovery stage that will appear as if we still have a bit of pain here and there. But I can assure us that indeed, with all the medications that we have taken, with all the policies of the current federal government, renewed hope that indeed there is light down the tunnel. And so my message to all Lagosians is to remain hopeful, is to know that indeed what we're going through is not peculiar to us and better times are ahead of us. In Lagos, we're thankful to God We're thankful for what God has done for us. We continue to remain the commercial economic nerve center of our country. We'll continue to attract investment at the highest level into the country. We'll continue to be a beacon of social economic transformation in our country. We'll continue to remain the most peaceful part of our country.
Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu speaking there. You're listening to NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegal state prosecutor to appeal opposition Ousmane Sonko's inclusion in electoral roll, but expert warns of imminent public uproar. Nigerian junta to revise all agreements with countries with military bases on its soil. Tragedy strikes in Liberia as dozens fear dead in Bong County fuel tanker explosion. And the governor of Nigeria's commercial state of Lagos tells citizens to be hopeful of greater prosperity. And still ahead in the news, we do have a newspaper review, guest interview segment, and sports updates. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, we are streaming live on wadr.org, YouTube, and Facebook. The Ghana Water Company Limited is raising alarm over illegal mining activities, popularly known as Galamsey, close to the Bunso Water Treatment Plant extraction point in Akiem Abuakwa in the eastern region. The activities of the miners have left the water company no option than to suspend operations following the alarming rise in turbidity of raw water source from the Birim River. WDL's Nadide Tete in Accra has more details.
Production was halted on December 23, 2023, due to a rise in turbidity levels peaking at 6,290 NTU. Hopes for a swift return to regular operations were dashed when the turbidity escalated to 7,130 NTU the subsequent day. By December 25, although there was a decrease to 6,160 NTU, the levels remain unsustainable for resuming production. Sources suggest the surge in turbidity could be linked to numerous illegal miners using Shamfang equipment on the Brim River. Kwejo Dase, the Eastern Regional Public Relations Officer for the Ghana Water Company Limited, says that the miners' activities are a significant concern, especially as they encroach dangerously close to the treatment plant's intake point. Mr. Darcy said if this issue isn't properly addressed, it could severely impact their operations.
Close to our suction point, our abstraction point, they've done whatever they can do, Lord, to in the forest cover, and then now they are just entering where we have encountered the river, so that we can always have some water retained and abstracted for production. So it makes it more alarming. And then it's what we need to tell at this, because seriously, now that they come as close as to our abstraction point, that means very soon they will enter that point and then giving damage whatever you have there, or in pursuit of their illegal mining activity.
The Achimebwaka region has experienced repeated disruptions in its water treatment facilities due to the adverse effects of illegal mining. The Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences recently issued a statement expressing grave concerns over the environmental and health risks posed by illicit mining activities across the nation. The Academy indicates its readiness to join forces with various stakeholders to combat illegal mining, underscoring the pressing need for united and consistent actions to counteract the looming threat to both present and future generations. For WADR, Nadide Tete, Accra.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Let's now head to Banjul as we join Sankuli Janko for the newspaper review.
Hello there and welcome to this edition of the Press Review. Let's begin today's Press Review with the Point newspaper, whose lead story reads, Basse Customs supposed to hit $28 million target. Basse is a border town between Senegal and the Gambia in the eastern part of the country, where a lot of West Africans crisscross. In fact, it is one of the entry points of the Gambia for West Africans all over, from Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone. They use it as an entry point to the Gambia, and it is believed that they will meet the target of $28 million Dalasi. The Gambia Immigration Department battles to combat rising irregular migration. NBR's PRO insists Sabali's move won't shake UDP. Nene Cham elected new president of Bar Association. Ex-NIA Operations Director allegedly stabbed at Mile 2 prison. Timbuktu Bookshop observes Silver Jubilee. Let's move on to the Voice newspaper. And the Voice newspaper's lead story today reads, Dabo says UDP committed to United Democratic Society. Of course, Lawyer Dabo is the opposition leader and the Secretary General of United Democratic Party, UDP. Gambians ought to avoid political opportunists. This one reads, NPP top brass agrees Sabali's defection represents huge gain for ruling party. The campaign manager of the United Democratic Party, that's the opposition party, recently defected to the ruling National People's Party, NPP. And the party top brass feels that this is a huge gain for the party. MOTC disburses over $400,000 City Community Festival organizers. Historian publishes book on the life of Matar A. Sar. Let's move on to the Standard newspaper. The Standard newspaper's lead story reads, National dialogue on illegal migration starts today. With a huge photo of a migrant boat carrying dozens of people. Union decries lack of garage. Modou Cissé is the president of the Transport Union of the Gambia. And this one also reads, National Audit Office tells public institutions to submit financial statements on time. Again, Nene Cham is new president of Gambia Bar Association. VDF gives over $1 million in scholarships, religious and disaster supports. Let's move on to the final newspaper for today, and that is the Fourier newspaper. The lead story on the Fourier newspaper reads, Trade season, farmers sell groundnut on credit to government. It's interesting there. Gambia repatriates stranded migrants from Tunisia. That's another story on the Fourier newspaper. And again, this one reads, Gambia Bar Association elects new executive, of course, led by Nene Cham, who is now the new president of the Bar Association. Turkey's delegation, led by General Yusuf Asyan, pays visit to the Ministry of Interior. And finally, this one reads, France completes withdrawal of troops from Niger, closes embassy. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies, and it's back to you in the studio.
Indeed, interesting headlines there from Banjo with Sankle Janko.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, experts have been lending their voices to the call for the adoption of term limits for presidents and other heads of government in the region to address tenure elongation and leadership crisis in West Africa. Well, among this group of experts is Henrietta Kefre, a Nigerian lawyer with the Clooney Foundation for Justice. She believes that it's important to strengthen democracy in the region and curtail the crisis of tenure elongation or heads of state exerting long roles in their countries, leading to coup d'etat.
In response to whether we have the necessary conditions to ensure that term limits are abided by, the first is having a robust constitutional framework. So a number of our countries in West Africa do not have it in their constitution, and that is the first. So, for instance, the Gambia had a President Yahya Jammeh who ruled for about 22 years before he was then kicked out of the country in 2017 when a new president was elected, President Barrow. And the Gambia started a review of the constitution to include term limits because before then they hadn't had one. And so eventually they were having a system of possibly having a president rule for life. And so the first step is where there is a term limit, that is something that we can hold the leaders to constitution. We have found cases where the term limits, where term limits were then removed and it led to crisis. But where you do not have it at all, then you don't even have a framework to rely on. So the first step would be for us to have that in the constitution, engage democratic systems, engage the different departments or different organs of government, from the legislature, executive, judiciary, civil society, the media, the people, to create that framework and then make it in the constitution.
Laws are only as good as the people who apply them. Don't we have a problem with the people. Don't you think we should look beyond term limits, look beyond the role the people will have to play in terms of development, which the people need?
I absolutely agree with everything. Term limits and good governance go hand in hand, and it's something that we must strive for in every society within our sub-region. So I'll look at it again from the angle of democratic institutions. I think one of the first points of call is strengthening our institutions. Where we have a strong legislation, then the president cannot use the legislature as a puppet system to change the constitution, as we're seeing in some countries that my colleague Mr. Paul mentioned. And where we have strong legislations, we saw that in the case of Nigeria in 2006, when the then president wanted to extend for a third term, and the Senate kicked back against it, the civil society kicked back against it, and it didn't work. And so where we have a strong, not just strong constitution, but a strong Senate, that's one way we can ensure that presidents protect themselves or use the system to change term limits and lead to undemocratic, processes or undemocratic governance. Another would also be the judiciary, having that branch of government, not because we've seen in some of our countries the judicial capture. You see when elections are conducted and when it is contested, the citizens lose hope that the judiciary is going to say anything different from the result, because there is a perception that the judiciary is captured by the executive, which is headed by the president. And so having stronger democratic institutions is one way to man against that. Another way is, again, strengthening civil society, empowering the youth, empowering the people, even to the community or grassroots level, for everyone to understand why term limits are important, why democratic processes and democratic governance is important. And so we don't find that people sell their vote or people are accept to be used as dogs to disrupt elections and just serve as puppets for the president and the president's purpose of remaining in power. So we definitely have a lot to do, not just from strengthening institutions, but also strengthening people and civil society to understand its role in this regard.
Henrietta Kefre is a Nigerian lawyer with the Clooney Foundation for Justice. And in sport news, Mauritanian head coach Amir Abdou has named 27 players for the Africa Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023. The provisional list is also believed to be the final list for the tournament in January 2024. The 27-man squad includes 3 goalkeepers, 8 defenders, 8 midfielders, and 8 forwards. Mauritania is paired in Group D alongside Algeria, Burkina Faso, and Angola. All selections are provisional until the final list of 27 players is announced by CAF after the final submission on Wednesday, the 3rd of January. And we've come to the end of this edition of NewsLink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mr. Vasek and Maudaju for the technical assistance. Let's continue the conversation on our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WDL News, and Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio, English service. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9.